right, well, we're on Parshas Lech Lecha on page 54, and it deals primarily with Avram. And it begins by saying, V'yomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha ma'artzecha, you should go from your land, M'molodetecha, from your birthplace, U'mibeis avicha, and from your father's house, El ha'aretz asher areka, to the land of which I will show you. So, this is really the first we really get to know Avram at all. He isn't given an introduction to us like Noah was as to who he is, but we get to know Avraham being the first self-developed monotheist who believed in ethical monotheism. Right, came from a world where everybody was a idol worshiper, and because of his relationship with God and his desire to educate the world, so Hashem has a special plan for him that we'll see. So first we list a few things. The expression here, it says Lech Lecha, is a funny way of saying that a person should go, and then it tells you what he should go from. And he says it sort of backwards. He says you should leave your country, you should leave your town, and you should leave your house. It's really, when a person goes away from somewhere, you leave your house first, then you leave the area, right, that you were born in, and then you leave your country. Right? If you're born in a house, then you leave the city, and then you leave the country. You don't leave the country, and then the city, and then your house. So clearly, in order to understand this, we know that this pasuk, this quote, is not talking about necessarily only a physical journey. Because on a spiritual or emotional level, when a person has to uproot themselves from a culture and they want to become part of a different culture, right? He's leaving a hedonistic, idol-worshipping culture and he's moving into his own culture, which he is developing, of ethical monotheism. So it's not necessarily just physical. So physically, it's true. You leave your house, then your area you were born, and then your country. But when a person wants to leave a culture, so we do it in stages. That first the culture has certain things about that culture that makes it special. And here God says you have to stop following those things. For instance, you have, even today, not necessarily bad or good, but if you have people that come from a certain country, their ideas of what becomes normal and what should be done is based on that country. I hear, how many times do I hear, in South Africa, this is how we used to do it, right? Right? Because that's how you did it there. And it's not necessarily the same that we do it here. But if we don't do it the same as they did in South Africa, then the people from South Africa feel, even though they might know differently, they feel that it's wrong. Why? Because you were raised with this. That's right, part of the culture that you had. So that's one thing. And then your father's house, so that means that the way that you were raised, specifically by your family. So for instance, if a person is raised in a home where people don't think that stealing is so terrible, maybe they'll go into a store and switch the prices on things. Right? So then you as a child growing up in that home will have a lot of difficulty in understanding why that's bad, because your own parents did it. And how can my parents do something that's bad? So of course it's not so bad. So even when you get older and you realize that your parents had a flaw and they shouldn't have done it, you sort of can't really accept that it was a terrible thing to do. So you, in order to leave your parents' house, you have to be able to leave those feelings. Also, you have feelings of things you like. You know, like in our house, even with food, my mother used to make cabbage soup at holidays. So it's sort of like it's not a holiday unless we have cabbage soup, because of how I was raised, right? Or the way you treat people. Or like I always have problems when I talk to people who have a title, like a doctor, not calling them by their title. Right? As I was raised, you call people by their title. They worked to get their title. You use it. And so now when I talk to people, especially if they're younger than me and they have a title, they're always telling me, don't call me by that. You know, don't use my title. Call me by my name. And I have to remind myself, right? Because that's how I was raised. So Avraham is being told, first leave the customs of your people. Now leave the customs or the way that you were raised. And then it says you have to leave your father's house. And that's very specific. That's really how things were within your own home. And so that is the hardest thing to do. So a person has these three levels that they have to go through in a spiritual sense. So that's the negative, but there's a positive in this statement also. And it's the first, right in the beginning, which is Lech Lecha. Right? That's go you. That's what it means, go you. And God's telling him in a command form, you have to leave. But the Chidushei Arim, the great Hasidic rabbi from the city of Ger in Poland, he said that Lech Lecha also means go to yourself. Get to know yourself. Right? Look within yourself. That human beings have enormous potential, and Avram also had enormous potential. And God's saying, the first thing you have to do before you change the world is you have to know who you are, and you have to make sure that you are the best person you can be. So as Abraham's about to begin his journey to make the world into ethical monotheists, God tells him first, Lech Lecha, go within yourself, see the positive, and learn what your skills are, who you are, and get to know yourself. Then you can leave your country and your land and your father's home in order to go and change the world. But they tell a story. One of the other Hasidic rabbis says a story that when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. Right? And I tried, and after a while I gave up. I saw I couldn't change the world, so I decided, okay, I can't change the world, I'll change my city. So I worked and I worked and I worked, and I couldn't change my city. I gave up. I said, all right, I'll change my family. So I worked very hard to try to make my family the way I wanted them to be, and it didn't work. I couldn't change them. So in the end, I came to the realization that I just have to change myself. So he worked on changing himself, and he says, that I accomplished. And as soon as I accomplished that, I could then change my family and my city and the world. But I first had to know who I was and to make myself the best I can. Then I can do others. Right? And we always look at, I want to change the world. Very few people say, I want to change myself. So God's telling Abraham, look within yourself. Now go out and change the world. And that's why the statement's written in that way. And then it says, Va'asecha l'goy gadol, I will make you into a great nation, v'yavarchecha, and I will bless you, v'yagad l'shmecha, and I will make you famous, v'yeya bracha, and you will be a blessing. This is also an odd statement, and what it's doing primarily is it's telling Abraham that all of the things that happen to a sojourner, a traveler, a refugee, so to speak, are not going to happen to you. God tells Abraham, listen, I'm sending you away to go out and be the leader, to bringing my word to the world. Right? But if you're worried because you're leaving home, you're leaving your culture, you're leaving everything, that in general, a person who does that, a refugee, they're poor people. Nobody knows them. Right? You go to a new country, nobody knows you. You're not famous. You don't have connections. You don't have friends. You don't have a lot of money because you have to move, and everything costs money. So God says to him, listen, you go do this, and I will do the following. I will bless you. I will make you a great nation. Right? In other words, from you will become many people. Now, at this point in Abraham's history, he's too old to have children, and his wife was sterile. She couldn't have children. So here God tells him, if you do what I say, a great nation will come from you, which already was sort of odd, but it's a blessing, right? And I will bless you, and your name will be big. That is, you become famous. And when usually it says, in the old days especially, where you didn't have international media, right? If you could be famous in one city and nobody knows you in the other. He says, no, when you go, you'll be famous. And then the last one is very odd. It says, va'eye bracha. It doesn't mean, and I will bless you. You said that already. It means you will be a blessing. So that the rabbis find a lot of difficulty with, that you will be a blessing. And here it says in the Gemara that you will be blessed. He said that you will be a blessing, and it will be and everything will close with you. So that is to say, if you look in the silent prayer that we say, you have, right, it says God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob, and then at the end it says Baruch Atah Hashem, right, Magen Avraham, you are the guard of Abraham. So we close the blessing with Abraham. So one of the ways that we see this is fulfilled is that, but we also know that it means that Abraham himself will be a blessing. And the commentaries explain that, like, let's say, a mother will have a child, and the child does something good. she'll say, oh, you're acting just like Abraham. Or if he does something wrong, she'll say, what if Abraham was here? What would you do? Would you act this way? So Abraham became the gold standard for a good person. So you will be a blessing. And people would say, I bless you that you should grow up and be like Abraham. That's another understanding of it. The Chadush Arim says that the fact that Abraham will be a blessing, right, means that inside of all of his children, us, there will be a little bit of Abraham. We will have Abraham's abilities, Abraham's desires, and the relationship that Abraham had with God. We have a potential to do that ourselves, right? And that the blessing that we have, that God will be close to us, is the blessing of Abraham. So therefore, you see it, that Jews who are very distant from religion will still be very identifiably Jewish, many of them. You'll find that like, look what happened in Russia. You hear they went to Russia. For 70 years they tried to kill Judaism, right? That they took it away from them, and yet you go there. Like in the 60s, you remember the pictures of Simchas Torah, of the kids dancing in Simchas Torah in Russia. They hardly knew what it was they were dancing for, but they had this Jewish feeling. People, right? Eventually, people went through great pain to get out, in order so that they should be able to live as Jews. You had people, during the Inquisition, they tell them, convert or die. People who had no religious beliefs, who would rather die than convert. That's how Jews are. We have within us this little spark that came from Abraham. That Abraham is a blessing, and within each of us is a little bit of Abraham. So that no matter how far away we get, we always have that spark inside of us. That's why when we do outreach, we can be effective with our outreach, because no matter where a Jew is in their religious beliefs, they can have absolutely none and no Jewish education. There's something inside of them that makes them want to be Jewish. Right? It makes them want to express their Jewishness, and therefore it's not difficult to be able to inspire, to ignite someone, so that they start to burn. They start to be on fire to try to find out who they are. It's not hard at all, because it's inside all of us, that little spark of being Jewish, and that's what it says comes from that line. And then it says, "V'avarchucha mivarecha," I will bless those who bless you, v'kalecha eror, and I will curse those who curse you. V'nivarchu b'chol kol mishpachas adama, and all of the people of the land, it means all of the people of the world, will be blessed by you. So, first thing, whoever will bless you will be blessed. Whoever curses you will be cursed. This we've seen throughout history. There have been many people who've rose up to try to destroy the Jewish people. They try to curse us. They try to hurt us. And in the end, they're cursed. They're gone. Right? There's a unwritten tradition that nations are sometimes come into this world, and they have all different purposes. But at one point, their purpose is to interact with the Jews. And very often it's to interact with the Jews in a negative way, like Egypt. Right? And when it was destined that the Jews were going to go down to Egypt to be slaves, and that the Egyptians were going to enslave us. Right? This was going to happen. And it says that after a nation goes and does something like this to the Jews, the nation will disappear afterwards. Their purpose is finished, and they're gone. So you look at the Romans and the Greeks and the Phoenicians and the Assyrians and the early Persians, the Egyptians, all of these nations, right, conquered the entire world and went to conquer the Jews, and after they did, they faded away. There was no more purpose for them. They did what they were supposed to do. Why is it? Because those who will bless you will be blessed. Those who curse you will be cursed. Those who come up against you, eventually you'll see that they disappear. So we're a nation that are contemporaries with the Greeks and the Romans, with the Babylonians, right, with ancient societies, and yet we're also here today, and they're not. Right? And we've seen that happen time and again throughout history. So and therefore, when a person blesses the Jewish people or treats the Jewish people well, God treats them well. And while it sometimes doesn't look that way, in the long run, we can look back at history and see it happen time and again. And that's what God's telling Abraham. These are all the promises that God gives Abraham for him to go and to leave his home and to go to Israel. You can imagine for him to walk from Mesopotamia, where he was, in the Fertile Triangle near Iraq, and to walk to Israel was not a simple thing. Right? It was very difficult, but he did it. And he was already well known. He already had a family. He already had a goal of what he wanted to do, and he had to give all of these things up to go to Israel and to start over again. And this is what God said to him will happen. It's interesting that there are very little things written about Abraham's travel from where he was in Ur-Kasdim, which is the Fertile Triangle near Iraq, and then getting to Israel. But it couldn't have happened in a couple of days. It had to take a long, long time. And there must have been amazing stories about things that happened to him or that he did on the way. But there is one story that's, we don't know if it's true, of course, but it's based on a medrash. And you might have heard, in Syria, there's a city there that's called Halab in Arabic. And it's in English it's called Aleppo. Right? The city of Aleppo. It's been destroyed recently in the Syrian fighting, but it's an old city. So why do the Arabs and the Jews call it Halab? And they call it, a person who comes from there is called Halabi, someone from Halab, right? So it says that the word Halab is Arabic for Halav, milk. Right? Arabic and Hebrew are very similar. So the Jews called it that, and the Arabs called it that. And it's a city in Syria, Aleppo, going way back. And it says that when Abraham was on his trip going from Iraq to Israel, he went through this part of the world. He went through Aleppo. And in Aleppo, he stopped with his entourage and he milked his cows, it says. And that because of it, the area became a very fertile area and a very old civilization. And because he stopped there and he did this, the area was blessed. And then even today, right, up until, let's say, a year ago, Aleppo was a very flourishing city that had a very old history, that both the Arabs and the Jews say that the name comes from this story of Abraham, right, that from his travels. But we don't know much about his travels. We just know that he gets there. So it says that when he leaves, beginning in the next verse, it says that he took some people with him. So who did he take? So it says he took Sarai Ishto, his wife, whose name was Sarai, and he took his nephew Lot, and he took all of the things that he had gathered together, all his wealth, and then it says Ve'esa nefesh asa asu v'charon, and the souls which he made in Haran. What does that mean? He made souls in Haran. Haran is a city; it's where he lived. So it says that he converted people from being idol worshippers to being believers in ethical monotheism. And we have an understanding from this line that when you raise someone spiritually, you help them spiritually, it's like you gave birth to them. You're like their parent. So here it says that the souls that Abraham made in Haran, he went and he educated these people and they converted. Right? And they became, but you don't convert really, they became believers in ethical monotheism instead of idol worship. And they came with him. So he had an entourage of people who went with him. Right? So his wife, his nephew, and then all of these people. And they went to the land of Canaan, and they came to there, and Abraham went into the land as far as Shechem, right? And it says then the Canaanites were living there. And then Hashem comes to Abraham, and he tells him, I'm going to give you all of this land. And it says that Abraham, right, went out and he walked around the land. So the walking around the land is a sign of ownership. In ancient times, there are many different ways of showing ownership. With us, you put up a fence. If you put a fence on land, you're showing that that land is privately owned. Right? You put up a sign, right? No trespassing, private land. So those are ways of defining it. In Rome, they used to plow the borders of their land with a plow. And anything within there was a sign that it was theirs. Right? So here, we have an idea that wherever Abraham walked, he acquired the land. So he walked all over Israel because God gave him the land. That was a physical way of doing it. So it says that he went throughout the land. But when he gets there, it tells us in verse 10 that there was a famine. There was no food. So you have to think about this. Here God tells Abraham, who is a successful person, right, to go with everyone, with all of his family, with all of these people, and go to the land of Israel, right? And I will do all these great things for you. And what happens as soon as he gets there? He starts starving to death. There's no food. You can't eat. There's a famine. So that's certainly not fulfilling what it seems that God wanted him to fulfill. It didn't happen. He gets there, and what does he do? He immediately decides, well, I got to leave. I can't stay here. I'll starve to death. He decided to go down to Egypt, and he brings his wife with him, and they go down. The whole entourage goes down to Egypt. And the next story is really about Abraham going into Egypt, and this is where he realized the Egyptians are immoral people, and that the world knows you don't take another man's wife. But the world also believed that a unmarried woman was free game. You could just capture her and keep her. That was how the world looked at things back then, right? Women didn't have human rights. So in this case, Abraham brings Sarah, his wife, to Egypt with him. He's afraid that the Egyptians are going to kill him in order so that she shouldn't be married and then take her, right? In other words, they had a rule: you can't take a married woman. So you make her not married. You kill her husband, and she's not married anymore. So so that's why he tells her, tell them you're my sister. Right? Don't tell them you're my wife, because if you tell them you're my sister, then they're going to come to me to buy you from me, right? And I won't do it. But if you tell them you're my wife, they'll kill me, and then they'll say you're available. So Abraham tells her to say that. Now, this is one of the early instances of this, but there are going to be many instances where we seem to find that our greatest heroes lie and perpetuate a lie. And here you have a case where Abraham tells Sarah, tell them you're my sister, which she's not his sister. She was his niece, that we know, because Sarai was the daughter of his brother. She was his niece, but she wasn't his sister. And though for him to tell her that is a lie. And we have to now understand, how could it be that our forefathers lie? Right? They lie. And this is one of the earlier instances, but we will have many instances where Abraham, where Isaac, where Jacob will lie. You'll have an instance where it appears that even God appears not to be fully honest. That's going to come up in another week. And we have to now wonder, how is this possible? Then another thing is that when if you look in here, it says that he tells her to say that they're going to go to the Egyptians, and they'll say this is his wife and they'll kill me, but you'll be able to live. So say you're my sister. So if you look at the Rashi, right, the Rashi commentary there, and I'm sure it's in the English here too because it's a very famous one. It says that Abraham tells her, tell her you're my sister. Rashi says because in ancient times there was a form of family member that was called a sister wife, and that was a certain level of a woman who, like a dignitary, who had a relation, was related to the man through blood, but also was his wife. Not necessarily, she wasn't his sister, right? They couldn't do that, but like his niece, she's related through blood, right? So you have to ask. Abraham had no intent that the Egyptians should think that she's a sister wife. His intent was they should think she's my sister, period, right? Because I'm trying to get out of them killing me. If she's my sister wife, they'll still kill me, right? So why does Rashi say that Abraham says it in the words so it's sort of vague? Does he mean that she's his sister or his sister wife? So you find this in every instance where one of our forefathers lies. It's ambiguous. It's not clear what they're saying. Like you have in the case of Jacob, when Jacob goes and dresses up like Esau and goes to his father Yitzchak, and he wants Esau's blessings because his mother tells him to, and he puts the piece of fur on his arm, and his father Yitzchak, who's blind, touches the fur, and he says, well, these are the hands of Esau, but it's the voice of Yaakov. Like he's speaking, he hears him talk. So I'm confused. Who is it? So he says, it is I, Esau, your older son. And it was really Jacob. That's a straight out lie, right? He's not Esau, your older son. What we understand is that commentaries say that's not what he said. He said, it is I, period. I am who I am, right? Esau is your older son. So you say, but that's not what he said. I mean, it's very nice, but they're playing games, right? Why are the commentaries playing games? If our forefathers lied, then there's nothing wrong with it. If they and so then why are you playing this game, like this legal fiction? It is I, Esau, your older son. And instead of saying, it is I, Esau, your older son, which is really what he said. So the commentaries say it was purposely vague because while a person in certain circumstances is allowed to lie, the Torah tells us, the more you do it, the more chance you can become a liar and then do it when you shouldn't do it. The more accustomed you are to lying, the more easy it is for you to actually lie when you shouldn't. So therefore, even when you're allowed to lie, you should lie in an ambiguous way so that it could be understood as the truth or as a lie. Even though your intent is to lie and that you want the other person to believe what you're saying, nevertheless, this way the words coming out of your mouth are not like bald-faced lie. They can be misconstrued. And it's not so that the person hearing it should think something different. It's so that you should not get accustomed to lying. Because the Torah does not say, do not lie. If you look at the Torah, you have a mitzvah, do not steal, do not kill, do not rape, right? Do not do those things. But when it comes to lying, it says, from a lie you should distance yourself, which means you shouldn't lie. But there are times when you're allowed to. I mean, if somebody comes to me and they say, do you like? I went to the store today and I bought this pair of shoes, and they were on sale. I can't bring them back, but I paid $50 for a $400 pair of shoes. Don't you like them? And I don't like them. I don't think that they are really nice. But they're not embarrassing to the person. I don't like them. They're brown, and I don't like brown shoes. So I don't like them. So the Torah would tell us you should lie. Why? Because the person can't take them back. If the shoes were embarrassing for that person to wear, then you should tell them the truth. You don't want them to be embarrassed. But if it's just personal preference that you don't like them, but you could like them, it's just you don't, so then you lie to them and tell them you like them. Because what's the alternative? They're going to end up buying the shoes, can't bring them back, they're just going to put them in the closet, and they'll stay there forever. They'll never wear them again. So you have that by your saying that, this person who thought the shoes looked nice, and it's not like you don't think they look nice, you just don't like them yourself, they will have wasted their money because of what you said. So in that case, you're supposed to lie. You're supposed to tell them. Right? Sometimes we have somebody in the hospital, an older person, and somebody in their family dies. Right? Sometimes you're not supposed to tell them, right? Because you can kill them by telling them. Right? So instead you can say, where's so and so, my sister. Oh yes, she couldn't come. It's too hard for her. It's too hard for her to come. She's getting older. And in reality, she had died, let's say, the day before. And the person may never find out. And they're supposed to sit shiva. They won't sit shiva. Because, if you tell that person, it can hurt them emotionally, which will hurt them physically. So there are times when you're supposed to lie. This is an example of it here, where Abraham tells Sarah to lie, because ultimately it's best for Sarah. It's best for everybody, but he will always lie in a way that's ambiguous, and that's why we have that. And nevertheless, it tells us on 56 and 57 that the Egyptians took her, anyways, and they wanted to buy her like with a dowry, and they wanted to give Abraham all types of things, which he wouldn't take. But then it says that when Pharaoh took her at night to be with her at night, it says he got sick. And it's on top of 58 and 59. Hashem afflicted Pharaoh, along with his household, with severe plagues because of the matter of Sarai, the wife of Abraham. Right, so here, you can imagine he got some type of disease where he couldn't spend time with her. Right, so now Pharaoh's upset. Well, Pharaoh goes to Abraham and he says, what did you do? You tell me it's your sister, so I take her. Why didn't you tell me it's your wife? If you told me it's your wife, I wouldn't have taken her. So the first thing is, it's not true. He would have taken her. Secondly is, Pharaoh is now blaming Abraham for what he did wrong, right? In other words, it's like somebody steals something and they get caught by the police. So you blame the police for catching you. If you hadn't caught me, I wouldn't be in trouble now. Well, how about if you didn't steal, you wouldn't be in trouble? Doesn't matter. If you didn't come and chase me around, I wouldn't be in trouble now. It's your fault. But that rationalization is exactly what Pharaoh's doing. Pharaoh rationalizes it. Why? Because he's the king. The king is infallible. He can't do anything wrong. So if the king goes and takes Abraham's wife, and because of it, he gets some kind of disease that he can't have relations with her, right? So he says it's Abraham's fault because you lied to me. If you had told me it's your wife, I wouldn't have taken her. And everyone knows that's a joke. If you had told me it's his wife, then he would have killed Abraham and taken her, right? So then he gets her back, right? And now he leaves. Now when he leaves, the big change for Abraham is that he's rich. It says he went up from Egypt, him and his wife, and all that was with him, and Lot was with him. And now Abraham was very laden with livestock, silver, and gold. In other words, he becomes wealthy. God promised him he'd be wealthy. And in Egypt, he's given money, plus he acquires money, right, in order that he's now a rich man. Now, an interesting thing is that if you look in the Hebrew here, in this verse, let's see. So it says here, it says that when Abraham left, it says, Vayikra Sham Avram b'Shem Hashem. Avraham left and he offers a sacrifice to God. V'gam lelot haholech es Avraham. And Lot, who went with Avraham, also had a lot of livestock, his own livestock, right? However, it tells us in the next few lines that there became a disagreement between Lot and Abraham. Up until this point, Abraham and Lot were like brothers. Lot left his home by his own free will. God didn't tell him to go because he saw Abraham was right. So he leaves his family and he goes with Abraham. But now they're leaving Egypt and they're having a fight because Lot allows his livestock to eat the grass and the vegetation anywhere they go, like anybody's land. If it's someone's farm, doesn't care. He's going through, his animals can eat it. Avraham wouldn't allow it. Now, we're told that Avraham and Lot looked the same. When you looked at Lot, you saw Abraham. It was nephew and uncle. But God created it that they were almost identical. So Abraham came to the conclusion that if Lot is going to continue to steal from people, people are going to think I'm stealing because they're going to see me. They're going to see Lot and think it's me. Right? They tell a story like if you have a king, and the king had a twin brother, but the twin brother was a thief, and one day he gets caught stealing, and they kill him and they hang him and kill him. Right? They hang him in the city square. The king says as soon as he's dead, you have to take him down. Well, why? We want to leave him up so all the other thieves should see what happens. They said because people walk by and say the king is hanging because it looks just like me. Right? And it isn't him. So they say the same thing with Lot. Lot looked like Abraham. Abraham didn't want that the world should think that he was a thief. So he tells Lot, we got to split up. We can't stay together now. After Lot gave up everything to come with Abraham, suddenly Lot changed. He became a different person. And it tells us about it. Actually, you can see it in the wording that Lot with Abraham, who cannot support them. So Abraham says to Lot, please let there be no strife between us and between my herdsmen and yours. Right? Is not all the land before you? You go to the left, I'll go to the right. You want to go to the right, I'll go to the left. So Lot raises his eyes and he goes off to Sodom. Right? And then it says that he goes one way and Abraham goes the other way. But you notice that in the original sentence, it tells us that, I just wanted to find the line. There's a line in here where it says that Abraham, right, and all of his belongings, Abraham went out with all of his belongings, right, and then it says, and then Lot came with him. Yeah, verse 1 in chapter 13 and 59. So Abraham went up from Egypt, he and his wife, and all that was his, and Lot with him. So it's a funny way to say it. You should say, Abraham went up from Egypt with his wife and Lot, and all of the things that were his. Instead, it tells you Abraham went up from Egypt with his wife, everything that was his, and Lot. Right? It's like putting Lot below the belongings. So they ask, what happened that made Lot change? Lot was a righteous person, and then they have to separate because of the way Lot was acting. In fact, it says that from the point that Lot changed, God did not speak to Abraham until he got rid of Lot. He said, I'm not going to come and speak to you with this evil person here. So something happened to Lot. What happened? So this line tells you. The line tells you by saying Abraham went from Egypt with his wife and all of his stuff, and then Lot. That is to say that what separated Avram from Lot was all of their stuff. Money. Lot became corrupted, which is why when Lot had a chance to leave, where did he go? Went to Sodom, which was a corrupt city, Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, that's where he goes. So that's why it tells us that. And off they go. Now we have a story. I just talk about it on the outside rather than go through it all, where Lot gets kidnapped. He's going to Sodom and he gets kidnapped. And you have what goes on is there's a war between 4 kings and 5 kings. This is the first world war in the history of the world. And one of the nations, right, one of the kings, kidnaps Lot as a way to get Avram involved, knowing that Avram not only had physical power and people, but also had God on his side. So if I get Abraham to come and help me, in order to get so he can get Lot back, I'm going to win the war. Right? So it says Abraham doesn't know there's a war, and he doesn't know that Lot's been kidnapped. It's not like today where you got the internet. So it says that a person came to tell him. And it actually tells us in here that it says in verse 13, then there came the fugitive and told Abraham the Ivri, who dwelt in the plains of Mamre, the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Anar, and he told him, right, that his kinsmen were taken captive. That means Lot, who's his nephew, was taken captive. So this fugitive, right, that's the word they use for him. Who was this fugitive? This fugitive, he was a fugitive from before the flood. It doesn't mean that he was running from the law, which is the way we use it. A fugitive means that he's a person who's running from something, or shouldn't be where he is. He was a person that before the flood, human beings were different than after the flood. They were superhuman for us. They didn't get sick. They were extremely strong. They were extraordinary specimens of humankind. After the flood, people had flaws in their body and their DNA, but before they were perfect. This one fellow named Og, they say, grabbed onto to the rudder on the ark, and then when the flood came, he stayed with the ark, and he lived through the flood. And so after the flood, he was still around. And now I don't know if it's meant literal or not, but he was a pre-flood human living after the flood, and therefore he was superhuman. In fact, they said he was a giant. Right? Og is known as Og, the king of Bashan, who was a giant. So he was the one who's called the fugitive, because he's a fugitive from a previous time, who came to Abraham and said, Lot's been kidnapped. And now the Gemara asks, why did he do this? It says because he wanted Abraham to go try to get Lot, and he'll get killed, and then he can marry Sarah. Because he was a superhuman person, Sarah was a super spiritual person. Together, he said, we could have amazing children. And we can take over the entire world. So I'm going to get rid of Abraham. Right? So he had an ulterior motive. Right? But nevertheless, it tells us that even though he had an ulterior motive to tell Avram, and Avram in the end fights the war and wins the war and gets his nephew back, nevertheless, even though he had an ulterior motive, he still receives a reward for this. And later on in history, we see of him with Moshe, and that he receives a reward. And you say, well, why should he get a reward? All he wanted to do was get Abraham killed, right? And so that he could take his wife. So that even though his intention was bad, his action was good. He helped save Lot. So because of it, God pays his debts. Even if they're impure debts, he still pays his debts. So he received the reward. And so then Abraham goes to war at that time, and he wins. So now the kings who he helped win and then got his nephew back want to show Abraham that they appreciate what he did. He came and helped us, right? So here in verse 17 on page 65, it says, the king of Sodom went out to meet him, Abraham, after his return from defeating Cheshdomar and Sedek, king of Salem. He brought out the bread and wine. The kings that were with him to the valley of Shava, which is the king's valley, but Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought his bread and wine. He was a priest of God the Most High. He blessed him, saying, "Blessed is Abraham of God, the Most High, maker of heaven and earth, and blessed is God." The king of Sodom tells Abraham, "Give me the people," right? In other words, we had a war, and you captured people in the war. Give me my people back, but you can have all of the booty, like all of the stuff, right? That you get when you go to war, right? They collect, fine art, gold, silver. When you went to war, there's a lot of objects and a lot of people got caught. So give me the people, the king of Sodom says. I want the people. You can keep the stuff. Right? So Abraham says to the king the following thing. He says, "I lift up my hand to Hashem, God the Most High, maker of heaven and earth. If so much as a thread to a shoestring, or if I shall take from anything of yours, you shall not say it is I who made Abraham rich. Far from me." So therefore Abraham tells the king of Sodom, "Forget it. I'm not taking anything from you. Because you're going to, if I go take all of the stuff that was captured, right, you're going to tell people, you see, Abraham, I made him rich. And God made me rich, not you." That's what, he won't take anything from him. The rabbis consider this a very important thing. It says because of this, the Jews were given the mitzvah of tefillin and the mitzvah of yibum. Yibum is with the shoe where if a man dies without children, and his wife has the ability to marry his brother and have a child and name them for him. So these two mitzvahs were given to the Jewish people because of this. Why? Well, because the shoestring, right, is like a piece of leather, like your leather tefillin, right, and the yibum is performed with a shoe. They use a shoe. So they're saying that the fact that Abraham not only would not accept anything from the king of Sodom, because he felt that it was wrong to take from him, but that he also, it says, he lifted up his hand to God. That is to say, I won this war, but it wasn't me who won the war. It was God who won the war. Right? This is God did this. Right? So because of this, the Jews received those mitzvahs. That's what it tells us in this section. Now, just to give you just a few points that are not following in the sentence structure, we have we know that Abraham is given a test, 10 tests in his life. And the Torah tells us that 10 times God tests Abraham in order to make sure he's the right one to be the father of the Jewish people. So one of the tests is Lech Lecha, that you should leave everything behind and go. Abraham passed the test. And we have a list of 10 tests. There was something that happened before this that the Torah doesn't tell us, the Talmud does, but the Torah doesn't tell us. And in my eyes, the eyes of most people, I think, it's probably a bigger test, and we have to wonder about that. And that test was that when Abraham was a monotheist, and he was living in Haran with all the idol worshippers, there was a king. His name was Nimrod. You might have heard of Nimrod. Nimrod was the king. And Nimrod told everyone, you have to bow down to idols. And Abraham wouldn't bow down to idols. He wouldn't do it. So it says that Nimrod told him, your God's going to take care of you, then I'll throw you into this oven with fire in it, this burning hot oven, if your God can save you. So he took Abraham and threw him in. And it says that he lived. God saved him. He went through this fire and he came out. So you'd say, you want to talk about a test? There's a test. This guy goes to Abraham and says, either you become an idol worshiper or I'm going to throw you into this fire. Right? And Abraham says, no, I'm going to throw me in the fire. I'm not changing. That's a big test. Right? It's a bigger test than leave. Right? All right, leave. Right? You have to leave, but you're still alive. You're still around. You're going somewhere else. And God promised him all of these blessings. He doesn't promise him nothing in the first case. He just says, I'd rather die than give up my religion. So you think the first one is a bigger test than the test of going, of Lech Lecha. So how come the Torah doesn't tell us about it? And so the commentaries give many answers, but I think one of the most poignant answers is that the idea of a person being prepared to kill themselves, right, to die for a cause, is an enormous thing. We can't discount it. But it's a one-moment thing. You decide you're going to do this, it's a hero's moment, right, and you're dead. But to choose to live your life in a certain way, to live your life in an ethical manner, it takes years and years and years. And that's not something that people ever hear about. So the guy walks down the street He looks to his left, he sees that the floor in this building is on fire, and right at the window is a child. The child's going to burn to death. So what would anyone do? Run into the building and grab the kid, even if you might get killed. I would say the average person would probably do that. Right? Why? Because he's in the right place at the right time and he's a hero. If you'd ask him, are you a hero? He'd say, I'm not a hero. Anybody would do this, and that's true. Right? But that's a test. If I'd say to the guy, if you spend the next 30 years of your life studying medicine, I have a prophecy that you will cure cancer. And he doesn't do it. So I'm going to get 30 years of my life to do this. I'm not interested in science. I'm not interested in being a doctor. But you can save millions of people. Nah. Nobody puts that in the newspaper. Right? The first one is like an amazing story. But he's a regular guy, he says. Right? So that is like being thrown into the fire. It's a test. But a harder test is to do it every single day. Every day to leave your home and dedicate your entire life to this, that's harder. Day in and day out. When you're having a bad day and a good day, when things are good, things are going wrong, when you have money, when you don't have money, it's still the same test every single day. Now, therefore, when we want to understand who is a hero, the guy who goes into a burning building is not as much a hero as the Jewish woman who gets up every morning to take her kids to school, or gets up in the middle of the night to change her kid's diaper, or is prepared to go without certain amenities or beauty things that she wants so that her kids can have better food. That's a hero. But nobody ever hears about those heroes. Right? A real Jewish hero is a person who gives of themselves in private day after day after day after day. That's a hero. A person who happens to be in the right place at the right time, that's not really a hero. It is, but it's not in the same way, and it's certainly much less. That's why you don't have the story of Abraham thrown into the fire in the Torah, because it didn't come close to the actual story of him having to leave. That's one. Now another one is when we talk about Abraham being such an amazing person, he had another one of his tests was when he had to offer his son as a sacrifice. Right? It's coming up in a couple of weeks. Right? He has to offer his son as a sacrifice. You'd say that's got to be the biggest test. Right? Here, before to offer yourself, you're dead. It's over. Right? You're a hero for 1 second. But here you offer your son, and he's dead, and the rest of your life you're carrying around this guilt that you killed your own son because God told you to. But you still had to do it, right? And what it causes. You say that's got to be a big test also, even a bigger test. And they say also that it's not necessarily a bigger test, because the biggest test really is the person whose life is every single day doing the right thing. That's a real test. That's very hard. And Abraham offering his son as a sacrifice, again, is a one-moment act. Even though he'll carry the guilt with him the rest of his life, nevertheless, the act of changing everything is the most enormous thing. And therefore, that's why I always tell people, you have to realize how many heroes we have in our community. How many people do we have who give of themselves in so many ways to help others, right? But nobody ever hears about it. Those are heroes. Not the guy who runs into the building to get a kid, right? Sure, he's a hero, but not necessarily is he heroic. He just did something heroic. That's how we see that. Now, we have this story here at the end of closer to the end of the parsha, with Sarah in chapter 16 and 71. She realizes that she's not going to have any kids. And according to the Medrash, Sarah did not have a womb. She did not have a womb. She had a birth defect. So she could not have children. So she goes and tells Abraham, look, God promised you that you're going to have children. He didn't promise me that I was going to have children. So maybe you're going to have children with someone else. So she had a maid. So she tells her husband, take this maid as a wife, have relations with her, she'll have a child, and then God's promise will come through her. So she goes, and he gives her Hagar, who was a Egyptian princess, and she conceives, and she has a child who's called Ishmael. Now, Ishmael is born later, but what we see is that we have two occasions where Hagar gets sent away. One is that as soon as she gets pregnant, she starts acting in a very arrogant manner. She tells Sarah, you're You're the woman of the house. You're in charge. Yeah, you can't even have a child. Your husband gave me a child. Didn't give you a child. Gave me one. Right? She started saying, I'm not, I'm a big shot, and I'm not going to do it. You want me to wash the dishes? I'm not going to wash the dishes. I'm carrying your husband's child. Right? So she was making Sarah miserable. So Sarah tells Avram, you have to get rid of her. Abraham doesn't want to get rid of her. A pregnant woman. Right? Abraham is a kind of person. That's what he's known for. God says to him, you have to listen to your wife. Whatever your wife says, listen to her. She's right. So he sends her away. And it says that at this point that she gives birth, and that the angel saves the child. Right? She thinks the child's going to die. The child's sick in the desert. An angel comes and saves him. And he says that just as God promised Abraham that you're going to have great nations come from you, he says that so too Yishmael, he's from Abraham, he's also going to have a great nation. He's going to have one, the Arabs, come from him. And what's interesting is when they describe him, is a very interesting description, and it fits so much with current events. It says here, on the bottom of 71, it says, and an angel of Hashem said to her, behold, you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you shall name him Yishmael. Yishmael means that God heard me. Shema, hear, El, God. God heard my crying. So he says, for Hashem heard your prayer. And he shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And over all his brothers shall he dwell. This is what the angel is saying, the blessing of God for Yishmael. So the first thing is to look at, it says, Hu yeh para Adam. Para Adam means a wild man. Right? That's what I said, a wild man. In other words, a person who's violent. Right? He's a violent person. Now, that would be what I just told you if the grammar was different. If the grammar was Adam Porea, or Adam Para, right? He was a man who has animalistic tendencies. Right? If he says that, so that means he's like a wild man. Like a guy who kill, he doesn't like how you look, he'll kill you. It's a wild man. But that's not what it says. It says para Adam, it's reversed, which means that the noun is para and Adam is the description. So that means he's an animal who's like a man. Yishmael is not a man who acts like an animal, but he's more animal than man. Right? He's totally wild. Right? This was the father of the original Arab nations. Now, I'm in no way saying that Arabs act like this, and this is a very simplistic description. But then it goes on and says, his hand will basically be, his hand will be in everybody's pocket, and everybody's hand will be in his pocket. That is to say, there'll be theft, stealing one from another. Right? It's just something we've heard of. Right? And then it says, and over all his brothers shall he dwell. And this was a common thing that we always talk about, like with the Palestinians. Right? They talk about how Israel is constantly persecuting them. They are or they aren't, but we're not into that discussion right now. But certainly we understand, and many people understand, that the Arabs themselves are persecuting them. That they don't allow them to immigrate into their country for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. They couldn't go into their countries. They had to live in camps. Right? They would not allow the Palestinians to become part of Lebanon, Jordan, Syria. They made them live in these areas, and then they said it's the Jews' fault. Right? In other words, that your brothers will be over you, right? Or you be over your brothers. That they themselves will be their own worst enemy. And we see that how to some extent this comes true. The idea of being animalistic, right? The violence that you see so much with, like the idea of suicide bombing, is like, it's one thing where it's one thing to kill people, and that's horrible enough, but to continually celebrate your child killing himself in order to kill others is certainly something that's far from us to understand. But that's where that would come from that idea in the Torah. Right, the description of Yishmael. Again, I'm not saying that it has to be this way or that that's the case. I'm just using some expressions from the Torah what it says. Just so you know, if you read the Quran, it changes everything here. It says that we changed it, but they say that wherever it talks about Yishmael, in their book it talks about Isaac, and wherever it talks about Isaac in our book, they say it's Yishmael. So when God told Abraham to offer his son as a sacrifice, that was Yishmael, not Isaac. Right? They claim that we changed it, but we have copies from before Islam was around, because they claim that we also said it was Yishmael, and then when they said it, we said, oh no, it's not, and we switched it, but it's not true, of course. And here, right, you see Abraham in verse 17 is given a promise, right, that he's going to have his children again, and here God tells him that I want you to go out and look at the stars, and your children will be as numerous as the stars. Right? So what he actually says to Abraham, go out and count the stars. Abraham goes out to count the stars. Of course he can't. So God says, just as the stars are countless, so too your children will be countless. You'll have so many children you can't count them. So you have to wonder, why, if God tells Abraham that it's countless, why does it say that Abraham went out and started counting the stars? God tells him you can't do it. Right? He says, go out and do it, and then he tells him you can't do it. It's countless. So the point is that there are many interpretations for this, but I think the one that I find the most poignant is that we emulate Abraham. And everything that Abraham did, and Isaac did, and Jacob did, and Moshe did, all of the things that they did are a symbol to us. They're to teach us how to do things. And one of the things that Abraham, by doing this, injected into our spiritual DNA, became a part of every one of us, was the ability and the belief that we could do the impossible. The fact that we believe that we can change the world. We believe we can make the world a better place. That nothing can stand in our way if we want to, which is a very Jewish idea. That idea comes from this story. Because God tells Abraham, go out there and start counting the stars. So Abraham goes out and starts counting the stars. You don't think Abraham knew you can't count the stars? He knew it. He's an adult. He looked in the sky before. He saw there's so many stars you can't count them. Now they're moving. They're on and off and up and down, and there's so many. So why did he do it? Because he wanted that it should be put into the DNA of every Jew that we are going to try to do the impossible. And we have the ability to accomplish the impossible. We can do it. We can make it happen. That's what he's saying here. All right? That's why, again, later on, God says, you should go out and your children will be as numerous as the sand of the sea. Also, you can't count the sand, right? But there's two different messages there. The stars, you can see an individual star. You can't see an individual piece of sand when you're looking at sand, just the sand. You don't see one little grain unless you're looking at it really close. But a star can be very far away and you can see a star all by itself. Right? So on one hand, Jews are like stars. We're individual, we're independent, each one's different than the other, but yet there are times when we have to unify and be like sand, where we're all the same. We're all like one. And on one level, we're all Jews, and we all have a common cause. On another level, we're all different, and we have something different to give. And so that's why God compares us to the two different things. And here he tells him about circumcision. Now, we don't think circumcision is such a big deal, but it was an enormous deal then. And it was mostly an enormous deal because there was a common belief which was picked up by the Greeks and flourished with the Greeks, is that the human body is perfect. That God, if I ask you a question, if I want to ask you about two people doing something, you tell me which one you believe is better. If God does something or if man does something, which one is better, do you think? Anyone want to say? Man or God? God, right? Right, you just think God. So a Greek philosopher went to Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says, and he said to him, actions of God and actions of man, which are better? So Rabbi Akiva said, actions of man. So he said, what do you mean? He said, come back tomorrow and I'll show you. And the next day, the Greek philosopher comes back and sees Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is holding a cake in one hand and a stalk of wheat in the other. And he says to him, which would you like to eat? He says, well, the cake, of course. He said, well, you just proved my point. The actions of man are greater than the actions of God. God made the wheat, man made the cake.